Hi, this is Political Dharma, and I'm Alan Zundell, bringing you news and opinions on politics, mostly outside of the world of the two major parties. Today, I have some short updates, one on Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the former independent presidential candidate who threw his support to Trump and has been nominated to head the Department of Health and Human Services. Another item is about Cornel West, another former independent candidate, and his party, Justice for All. And then some updates on the Libertarian Party. As I've been covering, they've had internal struggles for a long time, and now a major new development just last night. And then at the end of the show, I'm going to talk more about some of the organizations that are trying to bring independent voters together. I came across another one, the Good Party, and we'll explain what that's about to you. And then after that, go back to the United Independence Movement and give you a little snippet of a talk by the head of that organization, which I found interesting because of its themes. Okay, let's get started. The first thing I want to say is, of course, that Donald Trump, as you know, was sworn into office on Monday and hit Washington, D.C. with a blizzard of executive orders, many of them very controversial. But the one I wanted to focus on, because I had been covering the campaign of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. over most of the last couple of years. He was originally a candidate for the nomination of the Democratic Party. Then he switched to be an independent candidate for president. And then finally, he ended up dropping out and endorsing Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump is among those executive orders. He wanted the government to release whatever remaining information there is on the JFK assassination, as well as all the documents pertaining to the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy Sr. and Martin Luther King Jr. Now, to refresh your historical knowledge here, in 1963, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and there's been lingering questions about whether the accused assassin Lee Harvey Oswald was really the assassin or the only assassin, or whether there was conspiracy. And also in 1968, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s father, Robert F. Kennedy Sr., was assassinated, and he's had questions about that as well. And finally, Martin Luther King's family, he was assassinated in 1968. His family has long held that there was more going on than has been revealed. So Trump has ordered that any remaining documents be released, and this may give us more information on what happened in those assassinations. Now, Trump, in his first administration, promised to release all these documents, at least those pertaining to John F. Kennedy, President John F. Kennedy's assassination. But he held back some because pleas from the CIA and the FBI convinced him that there was some threat to national security if they reveal those particular documents. So we'll see what comes out of this. It won't be immediate, and it will take time for reporters and investigators to search through these to see if anything new or interesting is there. And of course, because Kennedy had endorsed Trump, this was in part a favor or a return favor to Kennedy. And Kennedy posted on X just after that his uncle, John F. Kennedy, had abhorred the idea of secrecy in government. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in his post was saying that we have a long time problem with secrecy in the government since then, and lack of trust in what the government tells us. So he thanked Trump for revealing these documents, and he's hoping that this reverses our trajectory to more and more government secrecy. So the other big favor that Trump did for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was he nominated him to be the head of the Department of Health and Human Services. Now, the news development on that is that a hearing with the committee that has to first look at Kennedy's nomination is scheduled for this coming Wednesday, January 29th at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, which is 7 a.m. Pacific Time, where I live here in California. And by the way, if my voice starts to give out, it's because we've had some smoke here from wildfires, and my wife and I went out this morning, and so now I'm a little scratchy. There was still the smell of smoke in the air from a fire near the border, not real near to where we are, thank God. Anyway, the Senate Finance Committee has to hold a hearing first and vote to determine whether they're going to advance Kennedy's nomination to the full Senate. I will be watching that hearing. It may carry over into Thursday, January 30th as well, and report to you on any interesting developments there, especially whether or not he gets passed on to the full Senate for a vote. The Senate Finance Committee has 13 Republicans and 12 Democrats, so it may be a close vote, and that reflects the very close, the near tie in the Senate between Republicans and Democrats in the full Senate. Now, a couple of the senators on that committee are names that should be familiar to you. They're both former presidential candidates in the Democratic Party. One is Senator Elizabeth Warren, and the other is Senator Bernie Sanders. So a little bit of news about Bernie coming recently, and this is from the Independent Political Report. By the way, the story on the release of the documents about those assassinations, the one I had on the screen was from the Associated Press, although it was carried by a number of news outlets. Now, this one is from the Independent Political Report online by Jordan Willow Evans, and it says that Bernie Sanders has filed his Federal Elections Commission paperwork for a potential 2030 Senate bid. His current term of office will end 6 years from now in 2030, and he has set up this committee to raise funds for it. I doubt if this means he will run again, as he will be 89 years old at the time of that election, and he said he thinks he's getting too old to continue on. But it will allow him to raise money for other possible uses, such as donating it to other candidates or in other ways facilitating his agenda moving forward in the U.S. Congress. The nomination process for Trump nominees so far has been mixed. None of them have failed for a Senate vote to be confirmed, but there has been at least one very close vote. Now, so far, 4 nominees have been confirmed by the full Senate. They've already gone through a committee hearing and then a hearing with the full Senate. First, there was former Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, who was unanimously confirmed by the Senate for the position of Secretary of State. After that, the John Ratcliffe, who I know very little about, was confirmed as the head of the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, and the vote there was 75 to 25, so less than Marco Rubio got, a little bit more resistance, particularly from the Democrats. And then Pete Hegseth, the former Fox News reporter, also was confirmed for the head of the Department of Defense. Very controversial nomination, and that was 50-50, with all of the Democrats voting against him and 3 Republicans voting against him. The tie vote was settled by Vice President J.D. Vance throwing the final vote to get him confirmed. Now, the 3 Republican senators who voted against Hegseth were a couple of the usual suspects: Susan Collins of Maine and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, each of whom has often bucked their party on various votes. And then Senator Mitch McConnell, the former majority leader, who didn't like Hegseth and is not the biggest fan of Donald Trump. Anyway, it was a very close vote, and he got confirmed. And then finally this morning, Kristi Noem was confirmed as the head of the Department of Homeland Security, and that vote was 59 to 34. So going from a unanimous vote to very close votes and votes that are a little more skewed with more no votes. We don't know where Kennedy is going to come out of this. I guess we'll see. Of course we will. And the other independent presidential candidate in the last election was Cornel West, and the news this week is that the party that he created to help him get on the ballot in some states, not We the People, that was Kennedy's party, the Justice for All Party, is forming a steering committee and holding officer elections this coming Saturday. Oh, that's today, January 25th. So they're going to be doing that. Cornel West is going to address them. And they're in the process of formalizing their party so that it can go on forward into the future, even perhaps without Cornel West being a candidate. So they are trying to become yet another alternative party here. I scanned through, really skipped through a couple of their videos on YouTube that had to do with meetings of the people trying to organize this, their steering committee, and didn't find a lot about how they think this party is going to have any more success than any other alternative party. They just talked about the mechanics of forming parties in the different states and then trying to get people elected to local office first and building from there. That's the strategy that every alternative party uses. And so far, it hasn't been terribly successful at boosting people from wins in nonpartisan elections at the local level to partisan wins at higher levels like state legislatures, let alone Congress. Certainly not the presidency, or we'd all be aware of that. So yet another new party on the map, and we'll see if that gets anywhere going into the future, if any interesting developments happen there. All right, so let's see. Oh, the Libertarian Party. I wanted to get to that. I've been talking about the internal problems that they've been having, mostly involving the chair of their national committee, Angela McArdle, and some controversial things she's done, and people haven't liked positions she's taken, and then the throwing out of office of the secretary of the national committee, and then a judicial committee reinstating her. Excuse me. There goes my throat. Okay, back in commission for a little while, I hope. Anyway, so the news there was that Angela McArdle, this controversial figure who recently has been accused of channeling funds raised, especially through the Kennedy Victory Fund, which was splitting money with the Libertarian Party, using it to benefit her partner, her live-in boyfriend. That's the accusation. This is also from the Independent Political Report, same reporter, Jordan Willow Evans. She resigned from that office and said that she had new opportunities that would make it difficult for her to continue on as chair of the Libertarian Party. She had a little more to say early this morning on X. She says here, I have a series of big reveals lined up, and they are all really fun and guaranteed to make some heads explode. So not shying away from any of the controversy surrounding her and that party, but still coming up with things that will, as she says, make heads explode. All right, so last week, changing gears here a little bit, I talked about how the best known and longest lasting of the organizations for independent voters, Independent Voting is the name of that group, they are closing shop. And they said there's new organizations with younger people involved that they're handing the baton over to. So I've been searching for some of those. I talked about a couple of them last week, but I came across another one this week. I think I had heard about it before, but didn't look into it very deeply. This one is actually pretty interesting. This is called the Good Party. Let me give you some things from their website to get a sense of what they're all about. Thegoodparty.org, making people matter more than money in our democracy. So they are supporting candidates who are not from the major parties and offering resources to help candidates get elected. A number of digital resources having to do with identifying voters in their area or helping them manage a campaign. And they're also running training sessions online for potential candidates. They say they're not actually a political party, and not. They are organized as a public benefit corporation, which is an odd form of organization for a political organization. They say that we're providing structured grassroots support and tools, online tools, to make it possible to run a winning campaign without the baggage and habits of the two major parties. And they say they have included in their movement the Forward Party, Alliance Party, Libertarian Party, Green Party, Reform Party, and Working Families parties. And they have been set up and funded by Farhad Mohet, called here a serial entrepreneur and full-time volunteer for the movement. On the picture on your screen from their website, you can see him at the far left. He's wearing a kind of hippie shirt, tie-dyed with rainbow colors, and he has a gray beard. I looked him up on LinkedIn and found out a little bit more about him. He actually created the online app that the Chinese company ByteDance bought and combined with another app to form TikTok. So he was at the root of the development of TikTok, and he also has been involved in a lot of other online ventures. Apparently has made a lot of money and donated some of it to the Good Party. The organization says that over 3,000 candidates were helped by them, and some won office. Most of them, I looked through them, most of them are for local nonpartisan offices or state judges who are also run nonpartisan. And that's pretty typical when candidates win as independents or from alternative parties like the Libertarians or the Greens. They usually win in nonpartisan elections, which makes the whole point of having ballot access for a party pointless, because they're mostly winning in elections where their party label is not behind the candidate. And that may be actually the reason why people are more willing to consider them, not so much because their party label is not on the ballot, but because the Republican and Democratic candidates do not have their labels on the ballot either for most local elections. There were a few, though, who did win office in state legislatures. They said there were 3 in in the House of Representatives in the legislatures, and 1 in the state Senate. The 3 state representatives, there was 1 in Washington State, 1 in Vermont, and 1 in North Dakota, and the state senator was in Alaska. Now, Washington and Alaska both have the what is now called open primaries, which means that all the candidates from all the parties run together in one big election, and then either the top 2 or the top 4 advance to the general election. So in jurisdictions where it heavily leans towards one major party or the other, it is more feasible for an independent candidate in particular, and perhaps sometime in the future for an alternative party candidate, it is more feasible for them to emerge in the top 2, because the party that has the advantage in that district, the major party that has the advantage, say it's the Republicans, if the Democrats do not have much support in that district, it allows independents to attract Republican votes as well as independents and get on the ballot. So that is a possible pathway for them to do better. The hard part is winning in the general election when they're up against another candidate from a major party. The other organization that for independent voters that I talked about briefly last week, because I've just started to explore this organization, is called the United Independence Movement. Let me give you something from their website as well. And they're very similar to these other organizations that have been trying to organize independence, in that they have a very vague sense of what kind of candidates they want, like as far as ideology or policy positions. They're just looking for non-major party candidates primarily. So again, it says, like these others, that it's a force for systemic change. They want to unite a growing number of Americans who identify as independents into a coherent political community. Now that part is going to be tough, coherent, because independent people who don't register with a major party can be all over the map. Sometimes they don't register as a major party because they're not following politics very much. Sometimes it's a protest against the major parties, but they still lean toward one or the other. Sometimes it's simply people are fed up with it and don't want to vote at all. So independence, there's a lot of different types of independence, and getting a coherent movement out of it would be difficult. They are trying to do something somewhat similar to the Good Party, that is, elect candidates who are not from the major parties. They have this Phoenix project that they started to elect several Congress people to the U.S. Congress across the country in the upcoming congressional elections 2 years from now. What I did this week in looking into it further was I found a YouTube video from its founder, Christopher Life. It doesn't seem like so far this party has a huge level of support, but I did find his remarks in this interesting. So he had a 26-minute video on his YouTube channel, which is Christopher Life, where he's talking to what appears to be a small group about the goals for his party. And I've condensed this down just to about 4 minutes to give you a flavor of what he's talking about, because I think it reflects some of the themes that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. first raised when he declared his candidacy as an independent, and also some overlap with the kind of things I've been saying. As you can see behind him, there's a Buddha statue, and behind me, there's a banner with sayings from the Buddha on it. So let me play that short video, segments from his YouTube video, where you hear a beep. That is where I've made edits. Otherwise, the edits were in the original video online.
The thing that has gotten political power and kept political power and used that political power for its self-serving interests for 100 years is the relationship between the Republican and Democratic Party. The two-party system as a duopoly is our modern-day tyrant. And our obligation as modern patriots is to declare independence from the two-party system. So we move ourselves out from being inside of that like hyper manipulative, engineered, toxic polarization thing. We remove ourselves away from it and we declare independence from it. I'm no longer inside of that mind control. I don't buy it. The whole lesser of two evils thing, gotta vote for this guy so this happens, this whole thing that goes on ad nauseum, I'm out. And it's exciting to see how Americans are declaring their independence. Because 25 years ago, about 28% of Americans identified as independents. And then 30%, 35%, 40%, 45%, 50%. And Gallup polls about a week ago just spiked at the highest percentage ever, where 51% of Americans identify as independent. What happens when 55, 60, 70%, 80%? Are we gonna believe forever that an independent can't win? When are we gonna start to open up our realization that we actually are the majority? That the emperor is wearing no clothes, that going along with the Republican and Democratic process is a hollow national ritual. And we're all just supposed to believe that the king still has clothes. And what does that mean? That means that government in our country is supposed to be synonymous with the Republican and Democratic Party. Those are the only legitimate choices. That's the only thing worthy of talking about in the media. That's the only people that ever win, right? So these are limiting beliefs at a national scale that we keep reinforcing as self-fulfilling prophecies because we believe them. So the first act of revolution is to stop believing it. And so we declare an independence from the two-party system. And that is what it means to elect an independent, is you take a public office that for 100 years, whether it's a state legislative seat or a national legislative seat or a mayor or a governor, and this system, I don't care red or blue, I don't freaking care. If it's been controlled for 100 years by the two-party system, it is in service to a set of corporate interests that are designed to usurp public power for profit without moral, at incredibly painful detriment that's catastrophic by scale of carnage and suffering. When we bring an independent and we get more votes than the Republican or Democrat, then we disconnect that seat of office from this lineage of control and put it back in the hands of the people. And when we do this over and over and over again, we increase the concentration of the government that's controlled by the people, and we decrease the concentration of the government that's controlled by ulterior motives and partisan corporate interests. And the work that we're doing in our organization is paving the way for a movement of American patriots across the country to say, I'm showing up for battle. And I'm gonna put my hat in the ring as an independent candidate, or I'm gonna put my time or energy or money on the line as an organizer and a mobilizer, and we get to activate a nonviolent army that is not asking anyone for permission and is taking our government back.
That was Christopher Life talking about the United Independence Movement. And those of you who listened to Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s speech he gave when he declared his candidacy as an independent will recognize the theme of declaring your independence from the two major parties. You might also, if you've been following my show, notice the same themes that I've been hitting on, which is that the two major parties are each beholden to corporate interests. And so to break out of that, we have to reject the two major parties for other candidates and try to elect them. I would like to see these two organizations come closer together, the Good Party and the United Independence Movement, because they each have very similar goals of electing non-major party candidates to office. I have been trying to figure out how they determine which candidates they're going to support. Not real clear on that so far. I get the impression that the Good Party just allows any candidates to use their tools, but will support those candidates who are not major party candidates in other ways. And the United Independence Movement, I have no idea at all how they're going to vet and decide on which candidates for Congress to support. What I would hope is that I can get in touch with them to let them know of my idea for the third party project, as I've been calling it, in which voters could vote in a online election using star voting. That is a voting system where you can rate candidates on a scale from 0 to 5. And then there's a two-step process of determining the winner with the broadest and highest support, that all the non-major party candidates would compete in one election for an endorsement of these independent organizations. Hopefully, all these efforts combined will lead to something that has greater impact, and we'll keep you informed as I keep trying to advance with my project as it seems to expand into other organizations and trying to bring them more together. That's it for this week. Thanks, as always, for watching. If you appreciate the show, like it, share it, subscribe to it. You can go to my website at politicaldharma.com to follow my blog if you want to keep abreast of my thoughts as I, in between some of these videos, I have things I want to say or write out. And then that's about it. So see you again sometime next week, subject unknown so far. And then on the weekend again with summary of news in the sphere of politics outside of the duopoly.